नमस्कार मंडळी, mymarathi.co.uk च्या माय टॉक सीझन 2 स्पेशल एपिसोडमध्ये तुमच्या सर्वांचे हार्दिक स्वागत. So today's My Talk special episode is really special in many ways. First is that this time we are starting this My Talk episode in full English, and that too on public demand as per the topic and as per the requirement. Another first is that today onwards in My Talk, in special episodes, we will be having different hosts communicating, talking with the guest. And this time we are having Dr. Prerna, Tambay. She is going to host this show today, and she will be talking today with renowned psychiatrist and a doctor who is a very special guest from Mumbai. He is Dr. Rajendra Barve. So I welcome both of them here on this show, My Talk Season 2 special episode.
Namaskar, Doctor. A very warm welcome in London. Our association goes back in 2001, and I could never imagine that I'll be interviewing you in London on behalf of My Talk and My Marathi. So tell us more about your journey from a practitioner psychiatrist to a mindfulness guru, and I think you have earned the title of Sugat Acharya.
Yes.
So our viewers would like to know more about your journey becoming an Acharya of mindfulness.
First of all, thank you very much, Prerna, for inviting me to share my experience and my ideas about mindfulness. And I've specifically used the word idea, about which I'll speak a little later. And I'm happy that you want to know more about my journey about mindfulness. But I think it's best that it is put in a context, in a reference. The frame of reference is what is known as VUCA word. Of course, everyone knows. You, of course, must be familiar with the VUCA word, VUCA. I think my viewers also will be familiar with VUCA. V stands for volatility, violence. U stands for uncertainty. C stands for complexity and complicatedness. And A stands for ambiguity, agitation. So in this VUCA world, I enter as a mindfulness teacher, which makes me feel very good, because my blessings from the teacher who made me Sugata Acharya. Now, why I'm referring to VUCA is essentially because the whole world, socially, politically, economically, and in a family also, is becoming a very volatile place. It has become a very uncertain place. Relationships are uncertain. They are not very sure. There are no firm footing for them. And
it's become a global phenomenon.
It has become a global phenomenon. It's not only in that England, it's not only the Brexit, it's not only about this or that issue. It's essentially everywhere in the world you see this uncertainty,
so
this restlessness.
For example, if you look at the young students also, there is so much of pressure of finishing their degrees and then getting their jobs. And it's difficult.
It's a very big challenge that we are facing today. And what VUCA has done to an individual, this is about global phenomena, but what VUCA has done to an individual is completely a different story. Because we are talking about mindfulness, actually VUCA makes people mindless. So if you understand mindlessness, then we'll know what is mindfulness.
So our viewers would like to understand more about mindlessness, because the whole theme is about mindfulness, and now we suddenly go on to another theme of mindlessness. So can you please tell us more about it?
So mindlessness, since we are talking about this 21st century and about VUCA world, as you know, in Mahabharata, in the Kurukshetra, at the last moment when Arjuna arrives for the great battle of Mahabharata, he stops and says to Shri Krishna, and he says it very clearly and describes the mindless state. So the phenomena of mindlessness can be traced back to Mahabharata time, where Arjuna says, Sidanti mama gatrani mukham cha parishishyati veputasya sharire me roma harshascha jayate gandiva samsrate hastat त्वक्चैव परिदह्यति नचु शक्नोमि अवस्थातुं भ्रमन्ति च मे मनः. Now what he says is भ्रमन्ति च मे मनः, which is a typical description of mindlessness, that my mind is wandering, I am confused, and he describes the state of mind and state of the body also, where he says that Sidanti mama gatra, my whole body is frozen and my body is burning, my mouth is going dry, And the most important thing that he says that Gaundiva Samsrute Hasta, that means the most important tool that I have is slipping out of my hand.
So the tool is mindfulness or
Yes,
mindlessness?
no, the tool is mind. And when he says it Samsrate Hasta, it is slipping out of my mind. My mind is slipping out of my body, and it is Brahmanti. That means it is wandering.
Oh, in current situation, if you look at, the mind is wandering. We are running after Instagram, Facebook, and there is
Absolutely.
so much of stimulus, and
Absolutely.
it's hyper,
Absolutely, yeah.
isn't it?
It's hyper, and what is now called as so-called multitasking is actually how many people really can focus on one single task. You know, one single task is over and you switch to the next one is a very huge challenge, and that's one of the reasons of becoming mindless. Now, when I say mindless, I don't want to make it a very derogatory term. Let me make it very clear. Mindlessness is not derogatory. Actually, some of the skills that we have, that we walk, we talk, we move about. I am speaking to you. You are listening to me. By the way, are you here? Or you have lost yourself? Is still your mind wandering? If it's not, please come back and listen to us and see us. So it just slips, and this is the skills that we have. And these skills are, in a way, can be called automatic behavior that we have, which is great achievement of human body and human organism. But what happens is that mindlessness can become an automatic activity, so that a life becomes
so they popularly
robotic.
call it living on autopilot.
Autopilot.
Yeah.
So we live on autopilot. I mean, it's okay that you move about, you drive, do this, do so many things on autopilot, but you can't think autopilot. You can't react autopilot. You can't have emotional reactions. They are basically responses to human situations. And we need those human responses, not just reactions. That's where the mindfulness steps in. So as you said, mindless and mindful. One of my friends said, does it mean mindful? Does it mean that you empty your mind? I said, no. Actually, mindfulness is just finding out what your mind is full of. And your mind is full of so many things in multitasking and multiskilling that you can't really focus, and mind wanders.
So doctor, can you please elaborate more, because this mindfulness and mindlessness, these are like very abstract concept.
Very true.
For a common person to understand how mindfulness as a tool can help them not only to survive in the VUCA world.
Very interesting. Mindfulness. I mean, mindfulness has been defined as being present in the moment on purpose, without judgment, without criticism, and accepting whatever passes through the mind and understand what the mind is all about. So this is one of the definitions of mindfulness. There are several definitions of mindfulness, but this seems to be the most appropriate, but it describes the state of mindfulness very well.
Doctor, you have been training mindfulness over the years now. So has your definition changed or evolved? So what is the transition you have seen in this journey?
Okay. Let me make one point clear, Prerna. One point that I want to make clear is very, very significant, because the whole idea of mindfulness is derived from the Buddhist thought and philosophy, where what Buddha called is Samma Sati. And what is meant by Sati? Sati is Pali word for Shruti. Shruti is what you have heard, what you have retained, what your knowledge is. And Samma means to collect everything together, all together. So what Buddha meant, and this is one of the 8 parama of Buddha, that this is Samma Sati. That means you are constantly aware. So one more definition of mindfulness, which can be directly derived from Buddhist philosophy, is becoming aware moment to moment. Every moment you are aware of what's happening outside and what's happening inside your own mind. And that is how mindfulness can be traced back to the Buddhist philosophy.
I agree
of
with you,
Sammasati.
doctor, but now the trend is they have tried to secularize mindfulness, and there are different school of thoughts. So some school of thoughts derive their roots at Eastern philosophy, as you rightly pointed out about Buddha's teaching.
Yes.
And there are philosophers and there are trainers like Kabat-Zinn,
Yes.
who take a more secular approach, and
Yeah.
they have westernized mindfulness.
Yeah.
So from a viewer's point of view, I want to understand what philosophy or what school of thoughts you belong to, and
Okay.
what are your views about the other school of thoughts?
Okay, very good question. I think what John Kabat-Zinn and one of the Western philosophers, scientists have done is a very important thing. What they have done is, this is a basic idea. Now, when I said earlier, I talked about idea. Mindfulness is an idea, is an experiential. It is not a concept as defined earlier. It's not a construct. Idea is something that you experience. So mindfulness cannot be 100% described or defined. So it's an experiential knowledge that you gather. And that's how the secular definition of mindfulness is more Western oriented. But the real definition of mindfulness will focus, sammasati, will focus on couple of very important aspects of Buddhist philosophy. One is impermanence. That means anicca,
yeah.
as said in Vipassana. And the other one is intuitive wisdom, that prajna. So the mindfulness in the Buddhist terminology will be more about prajna, more about wisdom, which is intuitive in nature, not derived, intuitive in nature, and compassion that you feel for self and people. So if you can say that the Buddhist roots want to focus on compassion and impermanence and wisdom, while the Western definitions focus more on mindfulness as a tool. So
we see that in that CBT training,
yes,
and cognitive behavioral theories,
which is very good, which is very important, and I fully appreciate this definition for two reasons. Number one is that it has brought mindfulness from the field of so-called religion to field of science, mainstream. One, secondly, it has allowed mindfulness to be explored, discovered, researched, redefined in more neurophysiology. So what they have done is they have done a lot of research on how mindfulness affects not the mind but how it affects the brain. And after hundreds and thousands of experiences of mindfulness from the monks, from ordinary people, from mindfulness teachers, they found that the brain change. Most important thing about mindfulness that is being talked about is neuroplasticity. Now, what is neuroplasticity? Neuroplasticity is when mind is tranquil, when mind is at peace, and there is no judgment, that there is no interference in the mind of the thought process. Mind creates new connections. New neural connections are built in the mindful state. That's why some of the definitions of mindfulness talk about mindfulness releases innovation. It gives you a different perspective.
So as they say, mindfulness, different outcomes. So innovation, creativity,
absolutely,
better negotiations, better communication. Yeah.
So very important part of mindfulness is becoming a mindful leader, because leader needs everything. He needs connectivity, he needs compassion, he needs that intuitive wisdom, and he also needs that innovation. So mindful leader is something which is evolving,
We will
and that's
talk
very
about
important.
that mindful leadership, but there is another question which is there in my mind, and I think it is a pertinent question for everybody. As we talked about, mindfulness has come a long way, and it is very, very popular in the Western world. And people have embraced mindfulness, and we have seen mindfulness working in practice. However, we see that mindfulness is become as a commodity. It is commoditized. There are thousands of books on mindfulness. There are various tools about mindfulness. There are teachers, and there are mindfulness centers, and there are different apps. And as Ronald Purser has defined, it's become mindfulness. So I wanted to know your views about mindfulness, and how, when we are experiencing these kind of things where it is turning into a commodity, how do we maintain that sanctity and purity of mindfulness?
Wonderful. Thank you very much for that question. Number one, I must congratulate British Parliament, because they are the first huge governmental body which established mindfulness as a valid way of reaching out to people and helping them for their mental well-being. Because the all-party parliamentarians reports on mindfulness, which came as early as 2006. So it indicates that the world has woken up about mindfulness, about awareness about mindfulness, its usefulness, application. But what happens, whenever a new idea evolves, it becomes a concept, it becomes a construct, which is about mindfulness. So it's made it very easy. It's like you read guidebook, you don't read the text. You don't go through vipassana, you don't go through the true experience of mindfulness yourself, and you start teaching mindfulness.
Well, mindfulness doesn't exist in apps. You have to practice it. You have to experience it yourself, isn't it?
But one of my friends said, when we had these discussions with my teacher also, and he says that, well, you need to make a beginning somewhere, and there's a huge wall against it. So you are breaking the wall slowly, and maybe this will pass away, and the true, the pure mindfulness, sammasati, will evolve, and which will talk about wisdom and compassion. And I'm very glad, because the research which is happening in mindfulness now is how mindfulness and compassion are connected.
Yeah.
So
lot of research
compassion is lodged in the brain, and can you stimulate it, and can you make the world more peaceful, affectionate, loving, friendliness place?
I mean, I have been through a lot of research papers about mindfulness. Some of them were so interesting that somebody who's practicing mindfulness can look beyond that person's age, color, creed.
Yes.
That's kind of things they are talking about.
Yes.
Mindfulness research talks about how mindfulness practice has reduced stress-related absenteeism. And in UK itself, 40% of absenteeism is due to stress. So mindfulness comes as a tool. But there's one more question.
Yes.
I'm sorry to bombard you with so many questions.
No, please, you're welcome.
But mindfulness, some people really think that it's a fad.
Okay.
And it may get washed off, because we talked about emotional intelligence, we talk about emotional quotients, and so many things that came and they had their time and then they vanished.
Okay.
So what is your view about, is mindfulness going to stay there, or it's going to be another fad?
Mindfulness is there for last 2,600 years.
Oh.
I mean, you can't say that it will pass away. It has survived the test of time.
No, my question was more from the Western perspective.
Okay. I have a response to that. The response to that is what you say about mindfulness is about being a fad and being a cult is there. I mean, it's there. There are people who like it, love it, and they just take it for a while and just leave it. But I think mindfulness isn't in that category, because you talked about emotional intelligence, and Daniel Goleman is working on mindfulness. John Kabat-Zinn is also work on emotional intelligence and also mindfulness. The whole idea of mindfulness has evolved from science. It has not come from religion. It has not come from even psychology. It has come from a different field altogether. So, and you talked about stress, and the basic research on mindfulness is about stress. And
cognitive behavior
therapy. That means it becomes a very important augmenting process which can be used in psychotherapy and which can be used in stress management. And as you very rightly said, it does reduce the pain and the threshold of pain. Now, it's a very interesting observation that I want to make about mindfulness, and that will again take me back to Buddha's philosophy.
Sure.
Is that this one word which is used in Buddhist philosophy is dukkha. The dukkha can be defined as suffering, not pain. And the initial research was on pain, and what the research came out and said, it's not the reduction of the pain, it's a relationship that you have with the pain, and that is the suffering. And that suffering ends, the suffering is reduced to considerably. So mindfulness is about suffering, about dukkha as defined by Buddha.
So it's not the pain, but your response to pain.
And that is the suffering, and that suffering is reduced, which is very important, because most of the lifestyle disorders are pain related, aches related, and dysfunction of the system, some psychosomatic disorders. So all this is part of mindfulness. There is one more thing, that many times mindfulness people think that mindfulness is about meditation, is about relaxation, which is really not so. Actually, mindfulness is being able to understand yourself much better and understand the principle of impermanence, which is neurophysiology. So it is not just meditation, it's just not a tranquility of the mind, it is just not relaxing your muscles, but just connecting to yourself. That matters, and that connectivity to self is called awareness.
Yeah, so around the chaos,
Yeah.
being stable, being calm, or
Yes.
being in that mode of acceptance.
Yes.
Things may happen, the emotions may come, the pain
Correct.
may come, the pain may go, but you being stable.
Yes.
So, Doctor, can you please explain us how we could get into that state of mindfulness,
Okay.
or how we could practice mindfulness, or how we could imbibe the practice of mindfulness in our day-to-day life?
Okay, very good. Because
And
that's
Doctor, I would really like you to talk from the demographics point of view,
Okay.
how children can
Okay.
practice mindfulness, how
Okay.
corporate leaders can practice mindfulness,
Okay.
how students can practice mindfulness, and how business houses also
Done.
can practice mindfulness for a cumulative result of a better society.
It's a huge plate that you're giving me.
But
let
I'm
me-
sure that you will be able to
yeah,
give me justice
I'll be
to
able
it.
to handle it. No problem. Let's understand mindfulness is as an idea, as a we can say, as a tool, because that make your life more comfortable, and you are at peace with yourself. Your relationships improve because you are very compassionate. So there are 4 applications of mindfulness which can be brought to day-to-day living. Number 1 is the most common one, is called mindful eating. That's where most people start, is that eating mindfully is not eating slowly. Eating mindfully means that we are completely into the experience of eating. Like Prerna, it's very common experience when we go to a restaurant and we are having food. What are we talking about? We
Yeah.
talk. We
Yeah.
talk about other restaurants, we talk about birthdays, about this, that. But are we there with the food?
Correct.
So when you are actually there with the food, you fully enjoy the food, and you are more satisfied. So mindful eating is about feeling satisfied with what experience that you had, because you tend to be very judgmental. This food is not good, that food was better.
Or you tend to look into
you
other
look at
person's
other people's, yeah, right,
Yeah.
other people, what are they eating? So that is mindful eating. That means you become aware of the food and self. Every morsel that you are eating becomes a complete experience. The taste, the smell, the touch, everything. The hot and cold and everything. So mindful eating is the first thing that people can practice. This is one thing. Second is mindful walking. Because again, people think mindful walking is slow walking, which no. Mindful walking means to be in the body. And when I say mindful walking, it may be just a very ordinary shower that we have every day. How often do we really experience the beautiful experience of the warm, cold water passing all over the body, and how it tingles you and how it makes you feel fresh? Very ordinary experience, but that can be really an enlightening experience. That can be a really rejuvenating experience. So mindful walking, mindful shower, mindful listening, which is
Certainly.
a hallmark of a leader. I mean, you need to listen to people with compassion without criticizing them. I want to know you. I want to know how you feel about saying it. So mindful listening is very, very important. And again, mindful habits of reducing your stress, which will include being able to switch off very quickly.
Okay.
So that switch off is very simple. So let me actually demonstrate. Let me show how mindful switch off can take place. It's a very simple thing. It's like wherever you are sitting, it really doesn't matter whether you sit in Padmasana, Sukhasana, or anywhere. You have to remember only 3 things. Number 1 is when you sit erect. That means you respect the natural curves of your spine. Keep your chin straight, slightly down. Your shoulders are braced a little. And when you breathe in completely. And when you breathe in, your abdominal wall comes forward.
Let me
and
try that with you,
okay,
Doctor, as you give the instructions.
simple.
So I can be the
breathe in.
demonstrators
Yeah. Breathe in. And breathe out slowly. Breathe in. Breathe out slowly. Breathe in. And breathe out slowly. It's a very simple thing.
Yeah, that was very calming. Very calming. Yeah.
You know what? The essence of this story of mindful breathing is that when you breathe in and breathe out, you think it's a very simple thing. It's a very simple way of bringing your mind back to yourself. When you breathe, your mind who is elsewhere comes back and stays with the breath. As you breathe in and breathe out, your mind is within the body.
So
Second important thing, when you breathe in and when you breathe out, your breathe out should be longer. You know, people say why breathe out should be longer. As doctors would know, viewers would know that breathing out, expiration of the air from the body is a parasympathetic activity. So when you give a little more access to parasympathetic body, which is calming and relaxing to the body, you have an opportunity to reduce your stress. So if you breathe in and breathe out slowly and longer, your autonomic nervous system is trained to take it easy and relax better. So such a simple thing. So it's not spirituality, it's nothing to do with religion, it is nothing to do with anything but simple neurophysiology of the body. And if you understand that, you will be able to breathe out slowly, and those moments you will realize that you are inside your body. You know what your breath is all about. And breath is the most secular thing. It can be really, breath is your best friend who is going to last till you live. So be friendly with the breath, and that is mindful living. This is true for to be mindful for everyone. But I would like to emphasize on mindful leadership currently in the corporate world. So we just go back to the VUCA world and say that how mindfulness can make VUCA world un-VUCA.
Okay.
Now, how to make VUCA world un-VUCA with the help of mindfulness. So let's go back to the 4 basic alphabets that we have. VUCA. So V, which stood for volatility and violence, will stand for vision. And a leader is supposed to have vision. So when you have vision, you realize that this volatility and violence is not going to last, it's going to pass. Because you have clear vision of what you need to do in life. Right? Second is U, which stands for uncertainty. That uncertainty, you ask a question, do I understand? So it's a very compassionate question. So when you say, I want to understand you as a person, it un-VUCA starts. Right? And C, which is complexity. And the complexity comes essentially because of all the judgments that you have, all the criticism that you have, makes your mind very, very complex. When you see the world the way it exists without any criticism, without any judgment, you have clarity.
Definitely.
So C
that's
is not
a very
complexity,
important point, yeah.
it's a clarity.
So complexity to clarity is the journey of your mindfulness.
It's the journey
leadership.
of mindfulness, because you are working out your judgmentalness. And the last is agitation and ambivalence. Ambivalence or ambiguity is essential because you're confused. You really don't know what to decide. It's like exactly like what Arjuna said, that I can't brahmanti cha me manaha. So that is converted into agility.
Okay.
Agility is flexibility. So you're allowed to take your decisions very clearly and you are at peace with yourself. So A will stand for agility and A will stand for at peace. That's the mantra of un-VUCA, the mind, with the help of mindfulness.
Yeah. So viewers, the journey from VUCA to un-VUCA is going to be an interesting one, but you will have to put in efforts in watching your breath, accepting things as they are, and being at peace with yourself, yeah, and also being compassionate.
Yes, and just last one, which I would like to tell my viewers, is that the new research talks about mindfulness. As you practice mindfulness for 8 weeks, 2 months, 8 weeks, every day, 20 minutes. At the end of the 8th week, your brain will start changing. It's not just an experience, it's just not a reporting. The brain shows that the MRI scan will show that your brain is changing. So 8 weeks, 20 minutes every day, and your life can be different with mindfulness.
Doctor, just one last question.
Okay.
I mean, you have shared so much of your wisdom with us, but I just wanted to understand, what was your most fascinating observation when you became that mindfulness trainer, and
Okay.
you have dealt with so many cases. You have taught corporate leaders and other students and managers and so many people. So your demographic is wider.
Yeah, yeah.
So what was your most fascinating observation about people who are practicing mindfulness and also people who have benefited from mindfulness?
Yeah, I think the two words which we talked about are the cardinal symptoms, you can say, the cardinal way of expressing or experiencing mindfulness. One is compassion, and the other is wisdom. So, and that happens when you understand the principle of anicca, or the impermanence. So, whenever I'm in touch with people, I can understand the compassionate way of listening to them, compassionate way of living my own life. So when you say about compassion, there is self-compassion also.
Definitely.
Self-acceptance also. Everything that I said about people, listen to yourself mindfully.
Say, for example, you are a doctor and
Okay.
you are dealing with so many cases.
Yes.
Unless you have your self-compassion and compassion for your patients, you may not.
I will not be able to survive.
Yeah.
So it's mindfulness will give you that beautiful glow that you have, because you are so much at peace with yourself and you are so compassionate, and yet you are not. It's not that you are crying, baby, all the time. Oh, so sad I am. No, it's being compassionate. It's being very at peace with yourself. So I have been practicing mindfulness and meditation, and I have gone through Vipassana. My teacher has blessed me and given me this beautiful name of Sugata, which belongs to Buddha. So I'm very glad that mindfulness is there everywhere in the world, but particularly in England.
Yeah. Thank you very much, doctor, for sharing your experience, and
Namaste.
it was so nice talking to you, and I'm sure that our viewers have learned something about mindfulness, because as they said that it's their own journey and they have to put in sincere efforts to get the entire benefit or full benefits of mindfulness practice. And I'm sure that they would be able to turn that VUCA world to un-VUCA world, and learn to deal with this uncertainty and try to make sense of this chaotic world and deal with it in a better way. Yeah,
Yes.
thank you very much
Thank
for
you
your
very
wisdom.
much.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
And as our tradition continues,
Okay.
we are very grateful that you came here and all the way to London. And on behalf of my talk, I would like to give this memento to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.